Hey everybody, and welcome back to another max velocity weather forecast. And in today's forecast, we'll be breaking down a huge weather pattern change that'll be bringing a massive cool down to the United States, one of the largest cool downs that we have seen all summer long. I'll be giving you the latest breakdown on that, and as well as Hurricane Lee in this forecast. But let's first begin with what's happening across the United States today, and we'll first begin with the southern plains. And this is an area that we're going to be watching for some severe weather later today. Right now, there is a little complex of storms that is crashing down to the south, going toward the Gulf Coast. We will be seeing some more severe weather later today, with damaging winds and large hail being the main concerns. And it's a pretty large area today. We are watching the southern plains, and we're also watching the northeast United States for some additional severe weather. And that is because we have a low pressure system that's sitting back up in parts of Canada. We have a cold front that's extending down to the south and east, and also a warm frontal boundary back up to the north. And this is going to allow for some severe weather as well in parts of the northeast United States. For those in the southeast United States, there's a little bit of shower and storm activity down in Florida today. I just got drenched from a storm literally in Florida, so there is rain ongoing in Florida right now, and that is obviously going to be very stationary. There's not a whole lot of steering with that area of storms, and that'll continue over the next several hours. And then further to the north in the northern plains, we do have some showers and storms up there as well. Not really organized activity at this point, but overall it's going to be continuing to move to the east with maybe a little bit of isolated severe weather later today. And then overall in the Gulf of Mexico and as well as on the western Atlantic Ocean, no activity right now. It's going to stay that way for the next few days until Hurricane Lee does approach, at least in parts of the Atlantic Ocean. I'll show you more on the track on that here later in this forecast. All right, let's talk more about the jet stream here across the United States. We have a pretty big change coming in the United States, and that is a huge temperature drop for a large chunk of the country. So as we go through this weekend, there will not be a whole lot of changes here. It's going to stay pretty stationary. The jet stream is going to be well off to our north, so we're not really going to see any big cool downs this weekend. So overall, it's going to stay pretty warm. But once we go later into the weekend, into early next week, we're going to have to watch over in the Midwest for a pretty big dip in the jet stream, and this will allow for a cool down for a large chunk of the United States. Now, you might be thinking this doesn't look very big. It looks just like the Midwest. That's not actually necessarily true, because there will be a cold front that extends further down to the south of the surface, and this trough will continue to dip. And as that happens, we're going to see cooler air usher in even to the southern plains, into parts of even possibly the Mississippi Valley, into the Dixie Alley. It's a very large area essentially that we're looking at for this cool down. And as we go throughout the week, so by Wednesday and the Thursday, this trough moves off to the north and east. There will be a chance for some severe weather, most likely sometime later in the week. Really, the location of that for more significant severe weather would probably be the northeast, but we are a little bit uncertain, at least on the specific details with this as of right now, but we'll keep it posted. And then once we go into next weekend, things become more uncertain, but the warmer weather will likely start to usher back in as we go into the weekend. In terms of the temperature anomalies, this gives us an idea of how the temperatures are here across the United States. Red indicating above average and blue below average. This weekend, we're going to stay above average for a large chunk of the United States, but notice this colder air mass that'll start to usher in from Canada, and this will start to push down to the south. So going into Monday, it's going to primarily impact areas in the central and northern plains, and as well as the Midwest and perhaps the Ohio Valley. Notice by Tuesday into Wednesday, though, this really starts to dip down to the south. Coldest of the air will be in the Midwest, at least from average. We'll also see that happen in parts of the Ohio Valley as we go into Wednesday into Thursday. Notice in the southern plains, we are looking at some cooler air there, and then a little bit above average temperatures for the East Coast, and that's mainly due to the fact it's going to be a bit more stagnant over there as that low pressure system develops. This will allow for some more rising air out of the south, kind of allow for more warm and moist air. And then as we go into Thursday, cold air mass moves into the Ohio Valley, and eventually by Friday into Saturday, that should move a bit more into the northeast. And notice on the very far right of your screen here, this is going to potentially be Hurricane Lee as it goes up to the north, as it makes that turn as we go closer to Monday into Tuesday. And this will allow at least for some showers and storms on the East Coast, but again, there's a lot of uncertainty on its actual track right now, and we'll talk more about this again later in this forecast. Now, the Climate Prediction Center has released their latest forecast in terms of the temperatures here across the United States, and notice this, going into Wednesday into Sunday of next week, so from the 13th until the 17th, below average temperatures are likely across this entire region that spans from Texas all the way back through the southeast into the northeast United States, with the highest likelihood of that happening in the Ohio Valley. And that's when that cold air mass will start to migrate from areas like the southern plains off to the east as we go later into the week, hence why there's a higher chance of it being colder there as we get at least into the later half of next week. In terms of the precipitation, unfortunately, this does not mean really any good news for the Midwest. We are likely not going to see a whole lot of rain up there. It's going to stay below average in terms of precipitation, and then back in the southern plains, above average rainfall is likely, especially in parts of the panhandle of Texas, and as well as north central Texas. We're going to have a pretty active weather pattern pattern there as we go into next week. And also the northeast United States, we are likely going to see some above average precipitation as we go closer to the weekend. And that would likely be from what we're going to be seeing out of Hurricane Lee. If not, we might see that trough produce some showers and storms. So basically 2 chances there of some substantial rainfall. In terms of the temperatures today, and we're going to do a little comparison here, but from today, temperatures in the southern plains, high temperatures near 110 in Wichita Falls. It is baking over there. Chicago only going to get to 67 though today. If we look at the temperatures for the highs on Thursday, it is a completely different world at this point. We're going to be looking in the southern plains at high temperatures in the 80s. Some areas in the Ohio Valley will dip into the 60s, like Chicago 66. Dallas, Texas forecasted to only be 85 degrees on Wednesday. Huge cool down coming. Look at the low temperatures for Wednesday morning though. Again, really chilly in some areas in the Midwest. We're going to start to see some, fall-like weather finally arrive there with low temperatures into the 40s for some areas. The Rocky Mountains will also dip down into parts of the 30s if you're in the Rocky Mountains. So it's going to get very cold over there as well. There will be some severe weather over the next few days, including today on Flying Fences Friday. We have 2 slight risks of severe weather, one in parts of the northeast that extends back through the mid-Atlantic, and another which does include areas like Texas back through even the Gulf Coast. Main concerns for today will be damaging winds and some large hail. Tornado risk is at a very low-sided affair today, unless you're in the northeast United States. That's really the best chance, and even then it's a really low chance today. In terms of the timing in the southern plains, we'll be watching for storms to fire up during this afternoon, so notice around about 6 o'clock or so, maybe 5 o'clock, some storms will start to fire up across southern Oklahoma and East Texas. These will become more numerous as we go throughout the evening. We might even see a couple lines or clusters of storms develop, and these will go north to south, and these will produce the threat mainly for damaging winds. The initial storms might produce some large hail. This is by midnight, storms moving through areas just east of DFW, but there might be some storm activity closer to DFW, and by the overnight hours, all that storm activity moves down to the south. Notice how we start to get like a little train effect going. That actually could produce maybe a little bit of isolated flash flooding, but overall that threat should stay, again, pretty low at this time. As we go into Scary Storm Saturday, there's not really much to be scared about on Saturday. We have a few marginal risks of severe weather, one in the northeast, one in the southern plains, one all across the Great Plains, and one in Montana. Main concern across the board is damaging winds and hail. Nothing really that concerning for tomorrow. For Suspicious Storm Sunday, we have another marginal threat of severe weather. That is across part of the high plains, and as well as the central plains. So again, nothing too crazy there. Now let's talk a little bit about Hurricane Lee here for just a minute. Again, we don't have anything that concerning here when it comes to an impact to the United States as of right now, but Hurricane Lee is a Category 4 hurricane. It was a Category 5 last night. The eye has become a bit smaller, but we still have a very defined eye wall. There's still a chance that this does intensify again over the next 24 hours, but overall it should start to weaken as it moves off to the west. Now notice the cone of uncertainty, it's still pretty large, and a lot of people are still really overhyping this. Again, this is not taking a beeline toward Florida right now. That's not what this means. The cone of uncertainty basically gives us an idea of where this eye could go. We are still expecting this to turn off to the north. There is still a low chance, I say low with a lot of emphasis, that this could go maybe toward Florida or somewhere in the Carolinas, but it is such a low chance. But the reason why that chance is still in play is because of how intense this hurricane is, and the troughing, what the timing is on that, it's still kind of to be determined, but it's more likely than not, again, this will turn off to the north, likely going toward New England or Nova Scotia. Those seem to be the 2 areas that would have to be more on alert for this. But look at the European ensembles, for example. Notice all the different computer models. There's only one right now that even brings it toward Florida, and even then, that shows it as a pretty weak tropical storm if it made that sort of impact. Otherwise, every computer model is bringing this off to the north. Then it still doesn't mean that we're definitely going to see this go north, but it's about a 90% chance that this goes off to the north, 10% that it goes toward Florida or the Carolinas. Again, extremely low chance. No reason to be panicking or concerned right now. Cannot stress that enough. Make sure you stay tuned. We'll keep you posted with no hype weather forecasts here on the Max Velocity channel. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe if you've not already.